Hello, everybody, and welcome to ZTV Live. I'm Susan Mulligan Fleischman, and there is a terrific thunderstorm going on right now. So if we lose power, please hang in there. Tonight, Ralph Peluso is with us with his Reading, Writing, and Ralph episode, and his special guest is Jane Leavy, with her talking about her books on baseball. And she is a walking encyclopedia on baseball, and she's sharing some terrific photos. So we're really looking forward to talking to Jane. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors for tonight's show. Tonight's episode of ZTV Live is sponsored by Murphy's Grand Irish Pub on King Street in Old Town Alexandria. Murphy's has outdoor seating, limited indoor seating, curbside pickup and delivery, and they now have live music Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings. Visit murphyspub.com. And by Riverbend Bistro on Fort Hunt Road in the Holland Hall Shopping Center in Alexandria, with carry-out as well as indoor and outdoor seating. Their new summer menu is available. Be sure to check out their delicious and refreshing specialty cocktails. Visit riverbendbistro.com. And by the Italian Place on Wythe Street in Old Town. Look for your favorite authentic Italian specialties like pizza, pasta dishes, fresh Italian subs, and Italian wines. Its counter-serve store stocks all sorts of Italian goods and goodies. Visit theitalianplace.com and see their dinner specials, pizza kits, and more, and mention the Zebra for 15% off your order. If you'd like to sponsor ZTV Live or place an ad, please send an email to ads@thezebrapress.com. And here's just a couple of items in the news today. Alexandria living legend MacArthur Myers was at T.C. Williams High School this morning, throwing shade at the plan to remove a large oak tree as part of the overall renovation plan for the school and stadium. The tree stands next to the current concession stand, offering valuable shade on hot game days. It's been in this spot for generations. Myers was at the school to protest the plan, dubbing it a witness tree in the process due to its long history living through turbulent times. The Zebras' Steve Gustafson and Lucille O'Flaherty were on hand and had the opportunity to speak with Myers about it. Hop on to thezebra.org and see their interview after the show is over, of course. Job seekers. The Alexandria Workforce Development Center continues to support residents who've lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic. Its latest effort is a virtual job fair with Metro, which will take place next Thursday, July 30th from 2 to 3 p.m. By attending, job seekers can learn about immediate employment opportunities with Metro. These include bus driver, police officer, mechanic, and elevator-escalator apprentice. The event is free, but you do need to register, so visit thezebra.org and look for the article where there's a link that you can click to register. After you register, a Zoom meeting link will be sent by email with the meeting password. Participate in the meeting via a desktop computer, laptop, or smartphone, and good luck to you. And finally this week, KH Giving is partnering with Hops and Shine and Mass Seafood for the weekly giveaway for the Zebras Restaurant Relief Fund. Shop KH Giving masks, dog bandanas, yard signs, and summer gear, including our Cool for a Cause t-shirt, modeled here by Hops and Shine's CJ Cross. Just enter code HNS at checkout for your chance to win and for free delivery within 10 miles of 22314. That's khgiving.org. And now I'm happy to welcome Ralph Peluso back to Reading, Writing, and Ralph. Hi, Ralph. How are you?
Hi, Susan. How are you doing? We're so
doing
excited for this special edition of Reading, Writing, and Ralph.
This is
We
a
have
special edition, yeah. Go ahead.
It is, and we're all so excited and thankful to have a wonderful guest tonight, Jane Leavy, who's authored 3 fantastic biographies on some great and generational baseball players. So, Jane, welcome. How are you?
I'm okay. It hasn't started thundering here, and my dog isn't crying yet.
Well, that's good. That's good. So, thanks for coming on. People are just excited about hearing you tonight, and the Zebra family is just very grateful for you coming on board. And why don't we start by having you tell the viewers a little bit about your background?
Oh boy, that's a long story because I'm getting old. I grew up on Long Island, daughter of a baseball hating mother and a New York Giants rooting father who grew up on Coogan's Bluff, the part of Manhattan that looked over the Polo Grounds. In fact, my dad was the water boy for the New York Football Giants in 1927 because his father, my grandfather, who I never met, was a bookie and a rum runner who supplied all the booze to the Polo Ground during Prohibition. So my background is bifurcated, and my mother never forgave me. She's been dead since 2006. Never forgave me for going into sports writing. Kept saying, "Why can't you write for Vogue or something?" She didn't realize I was in Vogue. I was ahead of the Vogue.
Yeah, you were, and I have to ask you a question. Is you were one of the earliest female sports writers, and so what was that experience like? It had to be tense. It had to be. You had to go at it with a sense of humor. But tell us about it. What was that like?
Excuse me for rubbing my nose. I know you're not supposed to do that on camera. I've often been called, a pioneer, and I always correct people because there were some really, really good women writing in New York, particularly about hockey. And hockey accepted female reporters earlier than the other major sports because they were so hungry for coverage that they would let anybody in. I did personally liberate the Montreal Expos long before they moved to DC. I showed up there in 1981. And the way it worked back then was that individual teams could make their own rules about access to the locker room. But once you got into the playoffs, and this was playoffs, Major League Baseball took over. So nobody had warned these guys about that. And nobody had warned me that they hadn't been warned that I was coming. So I sashay in after a great game. Remember the game that Steve Rogers pitched, the Montreal Expos, and Rick Monday made some great catch out there or something. And I walk in, and these very large men suddenly dove under the buffet table, and all these sloppy joes went flying and everything. It was not fair to any of us.
Well, they must have had reason to dive.
They had something. I mean, it doesn't have to be that big a deal. Every time somebody made a big schmear about it, I would say, at that point, my son was quite young, and I said, look, he's not, a world-class athlete at age 3, and he can put on his underpants in 30 seconds or less. So if he can do it, why can't you? I'll turn my back. You clothe yourself, drape yourself however you wish, because believe me, I have no desire, no matter what you think, to look at your junk. It ain't any prettier than anybody else's. That always stopped them in their tracks.
That's a great answer. Now, have you put the picture up of Jane throwing out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium?
Dream come true.
Yeah, so that's an experience every New York Yankee fan would love to have. And so you step out there, you're in the cathedral, and tell us about it.
The thing that really sucked about it, and I hope I can say that word, but we're talking sports. The day before, Ralph Lauren had done the same thing. And the rule is that you can't wear a jersey of a retired Yankee. So there's not many, to pick from anymore that are single digit. No, there are no single digits. And he was allowed to go out to the mound and practice with David Cohn, who gave him some tips. I'm signing books, and 200 signatures later, they say, okay, you're on. And I said, what about warm-ups? And they said, oh, no, you can't warm up. And I go trotting out there saying, as soon as they call your name, go. So I remembered to hop over the chalk line, because that I didn't want to be jinxed. And I had actually asked Sandy Koufax for advice. And, I said, in fact, why don't you come tutor me, and you could hide in the dugout, and I'll grab my elbow or my shoulder, and I'll say I can't pitch, and I'll call you out, and we'll sell 1 million books. And he said, Leavy, no bleeping way. So then I said, okay, will you at least coach me? And he said, how far can you really throw the ball? This was like in May, but so 4 months before. And I hadn't been throwing regularly for some time. And I said, probably 40 feet right now. And he says, stand 30. And whatever you do, don't go to the rubber.
Oh.
So I get out there and I look at the rubber for a minute, and I've been practicing all summer. And I go, now I can't go against Sandy. So I went forward and I went back, and I have the video. Depending on the angle you look at, I either bounced a curve or, came in low and inside to a left-handed hitter.
Right. Well, you got it there. So we're going to discuss three of, most people's favorite baseball players tonight. The final one will be Mickey Mantle, which, he's a wonderful topic to talk about. Sandy Koufax, who a lot of people don't know a heck of a lot about from a personal perspective.
Oh, okay.
And of course, Babe Ruth, who, in my estimation, is the greatest of all time. So I'm going to ask you a question here. I'm a inmate at St. Mary's, and this guy walks onto the field next to me. He's a left-hander. He's got a catching uniform on. Let me move over. So
that's you in that picture, Ralph?
Yeah, I'm the guy on the right. And I look at him and say, he's got the glove on backwards. He's left-handed. He's going to catch. Tell me how he goes from that to the greatest of all time.
Well, part of the reason he went from that to the greatest of all time, is what a doctor friend of mine once called neuromuscular genius. He just had what both Sandy and Mickey also had, this ability to transcend physiology. If you're hurt, you still can go out and throw a perfect game. If your knees are wounded in perpetuity, like Mantle's were, you can still make that catch to save the 56, perfect game for Don Larson. St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys was a Catholic institution run by lay brothers, the Zavarian brothers. And they took in orphans, they took in abandoned children, they also took in kids who they called wayward, or who had been sent by the courts. And they had way too many kids for the size of the facility. So baseball, which was then actually the national pastime, was not just something they did. It was an organizing principle. It was a way of keeping control over these hundreds of boys. Think of all that male energy, and then they get a little older and you've got hormones thrown in too. And so everybody played baseball. Dorms played against dorms, and floors played against floors, and trade shops played against trade shops. And that started when they were, as soon as they arrived. So basically, he started playing baseball at a place where they really knew how to teach it, and they played morning, noon, and night, and every season of the year. It didn't matter if it was winter. They had to do something with these kids, and that's what they did. So he had an incredible, opportunity. He did not start out as a pitcher. He started out in the infield and then catching with a left hand, with the wrong glove. And then one day he was complaining about their pitcher to Brother Matthias of legend, the guy who supposedly discovered him. That was one of the brothers said to me, everybody said they discovered him, but that's okay. And he's complaining about the pitcher, and Brother Matthias says, if you think it's so easy, you go out there and do it. And so he did. And, he quickly became known throughout the Baltimore area, which was a hotbed of baseball talent at the time. You got to look for that left-handed kid, whoever he is. They had the wrong name for him a lot of the time. But he was noticed, gets signed by Jack Dunn, who owned the Orioles at that point, which was not a major league team. He plays with them, goes to spring training with them, and is sold within a matter of months to the Red Sox because Dunn was going broke. Because there was the Federal League, which had been formed to try to worm its way in between the American and National Leagues, which later folded, as we all know.
Right. So tell the fans two things that are not common knowledge about the Babe, beside his 10,000 nicknames.
Well, the biggest decision for me in doing this book was, could I find something to write that hadn't been said about him before? And if I didn't find something like that, I wasn't going to do it. So I spent a year researching him and reading everything that had been written about him, and I mean everything, to see if there was an opening. And what I noticed immediately was that there was almost nothing about who he was, his family, of origin, and he almost all those biographies start, and the autobiographies, I might add, start when he's, 19 years old and gets out of St. Mary's and goes to the Orioles. So as a biographer, that, and as a reporter, your little BS detector goes on and says that there's a reason that's missing. And so I said to myself, if I could find out what was missing, there would be something new to write. And what I learned was that, and you didn't talk about this back in the day, that Babe Ruth's parents were divorced, that it was as messy and awful a divorce as has ever been described in the pages of the Baltimore Sun and the Baltimore American, which it was. They were divorced in May 1906. George Sr., his father, was given custody of the 3 surviving children of that marriage, the youngest of which was a little boy named William, not yet a year old, and he would die in a city facility outside, the downtown of Baltimore, of malnutrition, as had 2 other of Kate and George's children. George charged her with adultery and with alcoholism, and that's why he got full custody of the kids. And she was basically out of that house and out of their lives from 1906 on. But it was easier for Babe Ruth to allow people to go on thinking, that he was this, what they called incorrigible kid, who was always getting in trouble and who'd been sent to St. Mary's for that reason. That it was easier to take that on than to admit the shameful circumstances of his childhood. And that gave me a way of understanding him and understanding the public person he became and why he was a template for the first modern celebrity. Here's a kid, they went to the bathroom together, they ate together, they went through puberty together, they slept in long rows of head to toe of iron cots. There was no privacy at St. Mary's. So what better practice is there for being public, right, than that boyhood? And it explains why. I don't know if you have that picture. It's my favorite picture of Babe, where he's surrounded by kids and he's standing head and shoulders above them.
Babe in the crowd, yeah.
Babe in the crowd. That was taken in Syracuse in the summer, August 1925, because, of course, the Yankees and everybody else played exhibition games in the middle of the season back in the day. And so there have been, 5,000 boys are trying to cram themselves into the frame of a single picture. And what's fascinating about it is 2 things. One, how close you could get to them. I mean, think today if 5,000 boys tried to get near Aaron Judge. Not happening. The police and the protection would be out there in a second. So Babe craves this, and he's not upset. They're draped all over him, right? The second thing is that they're all looking at the camera. And to me, this is a picture that shows not just why and how he craved and embraced public attention, but also that it's the beginning of a kind of self-consciousness in the culturally. These boys wanted to be near Babe Ruth, but they also wanted to be seen being near Babe Ruth. And that's why all of them, except for one pathetic little boy who's wearing a tie and a beanie and a sports coat, is looking ahead, not back at the Babe.
Right. He gave a lot back to St. Mary's, and
that wasn't at St. Mary's.
No, afterwards, he'd always invite their band out to play.
And not always.
Not always. Well,
as long as we're gonna. In 1919, the school burned down, and he organized a tour for the St. Mary's band, so that of major league stadia, and they went with the Yankees wherever they went, so they could raise money to help rebuild the school. That was genuine, but and he did send cars to Brother Matthias. But the Yankees also used Brother Matthias and as well as the superintendent of the school, Brother Paul, to try to keep Babe Ruth in line when nobody else could. So they would summon them to come to New York and, or even Chicago, which they had Brother Matthias come in the summer of 25 when Babe was at his nadir.
He's a tremendous character, and he always, well, not always, he constantly at odds with the commissioner over barnstorming with Landis. We've got some photos, some great photos.
To consolidate his power. Remember, he had just been named commissioner, the first commissioner, and Babe was too full of himself and too naive and not well advised to realize that he was walking into a trap when Landis decided suddenly in 21? I think it's 21, to enforce a rule that had been on the books forever that no one had ever bothered to enforce. And it was ridiculous. And the rule said that players on World Series teams could not barnstorm. Everybody else could, but just not those guys. And Ruth, to his credit, he was not stupid about these things, understood that what he was offering was a kind of marketing for Major League Baseball that they couldn't get anywhere else. He was showcasing the game, and just like the really brilliant owners of today, they tried to shut it down. You wanted something else that people didn't know about Babe? He did know he was dying of cancer. The idea that he was not told that or that he didn't somehow intuit it is not correct. His wife Claire, his second wife Claire, told him that he was dying of cancer. And that was one of the reasons that he agreed to be a guinea pig for what was at the time a revolutionary form of chemotherapy and radiation that made big news, even though his name wasn't attached to it, made big news in the summer of 1947.
Yeah, why do you think that she did not want that out in the public, or why she chose not to tell Ruth?
I don't think it was about not wanting it out in the public so much as that, and I don't think she didn't want him to know. I think there was a sense that, that he would, that he would be pitied perhaps. Well, of course he was pitied. He was already pitied because he had been so cast aside by the institution of baseball, which somehow couldn't find a role for this guy from 1935 on.
Yeah.
So, he was not educated, but he wasn't dumb either. And, it's preposterous to think that he didn't know what was happening. Why would he have said to Connie Mack, "The termites have got me," if he didn't know?
Yeah. So, final question on Babe. Greatest of all time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He revolutionized the game of baseball and the game we see today, although it's been perverted, distorted, whatever, by, statistics and sabermetrics. He invented power baseball. And he invented the way of celebrating and creating celebrity for baseball. And people forget that, he was the best left-handed pitcher in the American League for 5 years before he became Babe Ruth slugger, the original slugger. So my friend Danny Okrent, who has written so many great baseball books, said a long time ago, the reason that he's the best ever is because he was both Beethoven and Cezanne. Are there people who could be better at one thing than the other? But yes, but who's ever done both? Let's see what Ohtani does after he recovers from, the injuries, and whether the Angels allow their, gazillion-dollar investment to try to do it. I doubt it.
Yeah, Ohtani's going to have to meet his marks in pitching, meet his marks in hitting, and then also turn around and steal home plate 10 times.
Yeah. Yeah, Babe was a good base stealer. He was a, you don't think of it. Everybody talks about that mincing little walk he did, that was supposedly an imitation of Brother Matthias. Well, yeah, they saw that mincing little walk because that was when he was photographed, when he was hitting home runs. But when he had to actually run, because it was that, if he wanted to get to second base or he wanted to score from first, he wasn't mincing around the bases.
No, he wasn't. He was a good athlete. So that'll lead us to the first trivia question of the night. Jane, you're going to know the answer, but don't answer it.
Okay.
Who equaled Ruth's record for shutouts in a season by a left-hander? And that's a record that he still holds today, but he's tied with somebody. So we'll get the first. Susan will let us know when we have the first winner. So let's move on to Sandy Koufax. He was a very quiet guy, and he had a very mediocre career brewing. And then things changed. What happened?
He was a bonus baby in 1955, for which Tommy Lasorda has never forgiven him, because they had to keep Koufax. They had to keep Koufax on the roster in the Brooklyn Dodgers, and they had to get rid of somebody. And the somebody they got rid of was Tommy Lasorda, and they didn't really give him a chance to pitch. Koufax was not a pitcher growing up. He was a basketball player. And no, he did not have a scholarship to play at the University of Cincinnati. He was a walk-on in Cincinnati as both a basketball player and later a baseball player. He played a little baseball in Brooklyn because everybody played baseball in Brooklyn, and his buddy Fred Wilpon, who was the star pitcher then, owner still of the New York Mets, he was playing. So he wanted to hang out with his friends. But he had no experience pitching. So to think that he was going to somehow have that control of that much of a fastball or a curve without any experience and without any chance to work was ridiculous. So 1961, he's sent to a spring training game that Gil Hodges was managing. And they only sent 3 pitchers. And one of the pitchers got drunk the night before and didn't show up. So he had to stay in the game. And the first inning, his catcher was Norm Sherry, nice Jewish boy from out in California. And what does he do? He walks the bases full, right? And Norm goes out to talk to Sandy and says, "Jesus Christ, Sandy, we're going to be here all day. It's only 2 of us. You have to stay in the game." And the night before, he had been at a bar with great old scout Kenny Myers, and who said, "Let me see your release point," right? And he took his cigar and he made a mark, on the wall where home plate would be and where his release point ought to be to hit it. And Kenny Myers showed him that he was overthrowing because he was missing that mark because he was overthrowing so much. So in anger the next day at himself and at Sherry and at he said, "You want me to throw the goddamn ball? You want me to just throw the goddamn ball? Okay, I'll just throw the goddamn ball." And by trying not to throw so hard, he suddenly got it. He got the control of his talent that he hadn't had before. He retired the side, never let anybody score, and that was the turning point for him.
Yeah, his career after that moment he was just unhittable, Well,
I was with him when they had that team of the century thing in Atlanta, 1999, 2000, whenever it was, and he was nominated, selected as the best left-handed pitcher, and he said, "I'm not coming unless you also ask Warren Spahn," because Warren Spahn had pitched as many games as Koufax did not, right? Yeah. And he wouldn't take full responsibility, wouldn't accept that being lauded that way without Spahn being there. And Spahn was very old and frail at the time and had trouble getting up the steps of the stadium. It was then Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. And Sandy gave him his arm and helped him up the stairs and walked him to the rostrum where they all were lined up, which is the kind of guy Sandy Koufax is. The ball came out of his hand different, is what every pitcher, pitching coach, doctor, hitter has told me. And so he may not have been, he's not the left-hander who pitched the most games or the most innings or has the most wins, but nobody threw the ball better.
Yeah, he is. Now, did he always not pitch on Jewish holidays? Because the only time I remember is I think it was the '65 series.
Correct.
He didn't pitch, and
Right.
that made the newspaper. But then I always wondered whether did he do that before or he pitched.
He never pitched on the high holidays, the holy days of Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. Alston knew enough not to schedule him to pitch on those days. The day that he threw his perfect game, September 9th, 1965, was the day that the opening game of the World Series was announced for being, what was it, October 6th? Is that right? I got that right. Doing that from memory. And after that game, after the perfect game, Sandy said to the reporters, among other things, well, you got to hope for rain, because he knew he wouldn't be pitching the opening game of the World Series. It was something he did as a sign of respect of his parents and of his family's tradition. He is not a particularly observant Jew, but he is, as Fred Wilpon said to me, a very Jewish being. And there were times when it would be really close call. He'd pitch a game after sundown, sundown being the end of every Jewish holiday. But no, he never pitched on a Jewish holiday. No.
Okay. Yeah, he was. He was quite. My impression, he was quite a gentleman, and the gentleman of baseball was always presented as Joe DiMaggio.
Ugh. Okay.
You might have answered my question.
Yeah.
So, which was the true gentleman?
Oh, Sandy. You know what the word mensch means in Yiddish?
I think so, but you can tell us.
Okay. Well, the literal definition of a mensch is a whole person, but it's used as a universal encomium. This is a human being, and that he's as good a human being as he was a pitcher. And that's saying something. He was very discreet. He knew that, remember, this is just 20 years after the end of World War II and the liberation of the camps and blah, 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 blah. He knew that he would be judged by a different standard, that if he got caught doing something that everybody else did, it was going to resound and rebound badly on anybody of the Jewish faith. So he was very discreet. Doesn't mean he didn't learn to love really good wine. It doesn't mean that he didn't go out with women, but he wasn't, picking out baseball annies at the back door of the clubhouse either. And he came to my daughter's bat mitzvah. How bad a guy could he be?
I couldn't be that bad. So you wrote in your book, someone commented at the beach that he had the body of a Greek god. Of course.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he did.
Did he? Okay.
He was so chiseled that at one point Alston's in the clubhouse. Now I'm getting the thunder. It's reached from Alexandria. He sees this ridge on his, he's on his torso. He goes to yank at it as if it's, glove handles, and realized, oh my God, it's muscle.
Because he doesn't look as sculpted as.
He totally was. But the secret to Sandy as a pitcher, which everybody, said to me whenever, what made Koufax, and they say, did you ever shake his hand? And I went, no. And they said, shake his hand and then come back and talk to me. So now I'm not a large, tall person, but his hand landed up here on my, above my elbow when I did shake hands with him. And you've got that picture of him holding 4 baseballs. Well, hell, he could hold 6 baseballs in a single, in one hand. Not just, his hands are gigantic. My whole hand like this, again, small hand, but that could fit in the palm of his hand.
Yeah, we have the picture of him holding 4 baseballs, which
that was after the perfect game.
After the perfect game. But quite. Do we have a winner on the trivia contest yet?
No, we don't. We have a lot of guesses, and I just want to make sure that I reposted the question because there are a lot of guesses. We have Sandy Koufax, Jack Combs, Ed Morris, somebody else. But the correct answer is Clayton Kershaw's been a guess. Oh, we do have the answer. Michelle Rogers has the answer. Ron Guidry.
Fabulous. That's the correct answer. That's
Yeah,
the
Michelle
correct answer.
Rogers, congratulations. Sorry,
Very good.
I scrolled right past
So
it.
tonight's prizes, which many people out there will appreciate, is a sleeve of golf balls with the zebra logo, as you can see. And I've been playing with the same sleeve now for 2 weeks. I haven't lost one. So the second trivia question of the night is, who tied Ruth's record for playing the most positions in their World Series career? And there are 4 people that tied that record. So we're not going to ask them what positions, but there are 4 people who also played 4 positions in their World Series career. So Jane,
I don't know the answer.
you don't know that one?
No,
Oh, wow.
not a clue.
Well, tune in, you'll know the answer because somebody out there will look it up.
Right. That's what sports writers do, by the way. We don't memorize this stuff.
It's hard to, but I have a good friend, and you're pretty good too. You kind of, you've got a good memory on this. I've got some friends that they're just phenomenal on this. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, most favorite player of all time growing up, Mickey Mantle. Power, just raw power. But how did you come to choose the Mick?
Oh, it's always the story that nobody thinks you're going to tell. But HarperCollins, my publisher, asked me after Sandy what I wanted to do next. And I said I wanted to do Willie, Mickey, and the Duke in New York in the 50s before. Oh, man. Okay, Betty, it's all right. I'm talking to you.
It's okay.
And they said, and I don't know how to clean this up. They said, nobody gives a shit about Duke. Nobody can stand Willie. Do the Mick. Literally.
Okay.
Again, I didn't want to do him every bit as much as I didn't want to do Babe Ruth because I thought everything had been said and blah, 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 blah. And also he had been my hero growing up the way he was yours. And I had a really unpleasant weekend with him when I was a reporter at the Washington Post, and which culminated in him passing out dead drunk, face down, in my lap at 3 a.m. And the next morning I got up and met him for breakfast. And I was sure he wouldn't be on time. He hadn't been on time for anything the entire but damn, he was there, and he was there before me, and his eyes were bloodshot and had his little specks down on his nose. And I looked at him and said, what were you thinking? You know, who does that? You know, that's not the way an adult acts. He was just like, oh, okay. I'm sorry, Jane. And then I told him that he had, I waited for him outside of the Yankee exit at the stadium. My grandmother lived 2 blocks from there when I was 7, and that he, instead of signing my autograph, farted in my face, which apparently he could do at will very well. So he says, I'm sorry, Jane. I'm sorry, Jane. I'll give you an autograph now. And he whips out an 8x10 glossy and signs, for my friend Jane, sorry I farted. I don't collect memorabilia, but that I kept. And I should tell you, you know, that earlier that day, after on the golf course, which was freezing, I was shivering. He said, "Can't somebody get that girl a sweater? She's gonna fucking freeze." And, there was no sweater, and he took off his sweater and gave it to me. It's hanging right there, and I looked at it every day when I was writing that book, because it is a reminder that nobody is all one thing, good or bad, and that there was a side to him that was kind and decent, and had been wrecked by failure, by pain, by injury, by DNA. I mean, alcoholism ran throughout his family. But when you grow up in Commerce, Oklahoma, starting in, was it 1935 he was born? No, 1931. Nobody knew that this was, something that you could pass from generation to generation. Nobody warned him. When you get to New York, you better not accept every drink that's bought for you at every bar in town. There was no Bill W. in Commerce, Oklahoma. Every setup at every bar was a setup for him. And he didn't have the help, any education, any support. It was a drinking time in America. 15% of the population, like it or not, they're not going to have a healthy response the next day. They're not going to say, "Gee, I don't think I'll drink another case of beer. That didn't feel good." They're going to go, "Oh, let's do that again." And he was one of that, unfortunate percentage of people whose biochemistry and wiring are just they're wired for illness.
Yeah, he feared mortality because of his family.
That was kind of bullshit for Ralph, as a matter of fact.
Oh, was it? Well,
yeah, I'm on a roll here. He said that all the Mantle men died before they were 40 of this disease that killed his father, which was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a disease that is now actually astonishingly treatable. But it turns out when I looked into it, only Mutt died before he was 40. That was his father. So the fact that his father died at that age, that's certainly significant, and he watched it. Mutt died at Christmas 1951 after Mickey's first season, and and he made him get married to his childhood girlfriend, Merlin Johnson. Before he died, he wanted to see Mickey settled. Mickey had been hanging around with somebody in New York who Mutt didn't think much of. And of course, by then, Mickey had been injured in Game 2 of the 1951 World Series, going after a ball, what ball players call a duck fart, which is, again, one of my favorite baseball linguistic turns of phrase. It's a Texas leaguer, basically. Yeah. And it was a ball that was hit by Willie Mays that would have landed, if dropped, directly between Joe DiMaggio, playing in his last World Series games in center field, and Mickey Mantle playing in right field. And Casey Stengel, manager, had said to Mickey before, who was a very inexperienced right fielder, came up as a shortstop, go for anything, the day goes heel is hurting him. So Mantle, who could run like the wind, took off in pursuit of this ball, only to find Joe DiMaggio camped under it. And DiMaggio didn't call for it, which is a bit understandable, because generally outfielders knew that if center fielder gets there, it's his ball. But Mickey Mantle wouldn't have known that kind of thing, and DiMaggio could have called for it, but he didn't. And so in an effort to not run into Joe fucking DiMaggio in center field, that's a quote from Mickey Mantle, Mantle, put on the brakes, and his spike caught in the sprinkler head, the drain, that was embedded in, right field. There were two in the Yankee outfield, and the landscape guys had forgotten to put the top over that grate, that steel grate that was embedded in the turf that day, and he was never the same. You know, and there was no today. If that happened today, you know, it would be painful. It would be awful. But you'd have, you know, the what do you call it? The holy trinity of baseball injuries. You'd fix the ligaments which he tore, and you know, and the cartilage that he tore, and if necessary, you give him a new knee.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have played on a new knee, but he'd be back playing in a year. Yeah. Not then.
Not then.
It's almost dramatic, that moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Do we have a winner for the second question?
We've had a lot of guesses. We have one. We had one. Scott McConomy guessed Pete Rose.
Well, there's.
I know there's four.
They need all four.
Well, people are guessing on Brock Holt, Bobby Richardson, Mookie Betts, Yogi Berra, Chris Bryant, which are all incorrect answers. So far we have one. So Scott McConomy has the
some
so far.
Scrub. It's got to be some bench sitter.
No, actually, they're all household names.
Mm-hmm.
At least in New York baseball parlance, but they're all household names.
Fans, they are.
They are.
Yeah. We'll keep it going, right? People should keep guessing.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
If worst comes to worst, we'll award the person with who guessed at least one. May 22nd, 1963, as you corrected me, at the stadium. He rockets the ball leading off the bottom of the 11.
You can see Kansas City A's, Bill Fisher was pitching. Tony La Russa was a scrub on the team watching from the dugout. The outfielder was a guy named George Alusik. Let me tell you how hard he was to find. The ball hit off of what is commonly called the facade. It was actually, you know, a copper frieze is what it really was. But, you know, generations of pigeons lived up there behind that copper frieze. And when the ball hit, La Russa told me it dislodged a generation of pigeon shit, which came down on top of poor George Alusik. That was that hard. Almost went out, but didn't.
I happened to be there as a kid with some of my friends from my old neighborhood. We all took the subway up there, and it went into extra innings, and you know, I think it was a Wednesday night, and you know, you're all concerned about going to school the next day, but we stayed. And back in those days, you remember you sat in the general admission because it was like $1 or $1.25, and then they moved everybody down to make it look like there was a big crowd. And he swung on that pitch, and I think by the time we looked up, the ball was already back at first base. That's how hard that thing was.
Well, they claimed that it bounced back to the second baseman.
Yeah.
On one bounce. I don't know.
Wow. And it was the hardest thing I've ever heard hit. So let's ask, before we get to the final segment where I'm going to just give out a list of players and you're going to tell me the first thought that crosses your mind with them. I'm sure you'll have some very creative word association. The final trivia question is two-part. Who broke Ruth's record for the lowest hits per 9 inning over their pitching career by a left-hander? And the second part of that question, is who broke Ruth's record for career home runs in a World Series?
Mantle.
Oh, you gave them part two.
Sorry. The only one I've known.
You know the other one, too. You just got to think about it.
Okay.
We'll send you some golf balls.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big golfer.
So they already have the viewers already have one half the answer. So
okay, I helped them. Okay.
So, Don Drysdale.
Bet you wish I was Jewish today, too. Don't just skip. That's because he pitched Game 1 of the 1965 World Series in place of Koufax, who did not play because it was Yom Kippur, the most solemn day on the Jewish calendar, and he got lit up. And so the Dodgers lost game 1. Sandy managed to lose game 2 on the day after Yom Kippur.
So, Duke Snyder.
Underestimated.
Ron Guidry.
Oh, man, I loved watching his red dot slider. Yeah. Elegant.
Yeah. He's a lot like Koufax and didn't even get a sniff in the Hall of Fame. Jackie Robinson.
I don't know why he was a Republican, but okay, he was great. What, he's the kind of guy, it's been written about so much, but that interests me because he's not one-dimensional. He's not just a baseball player.
Yeah.
He ought to be on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Put him up there.
Oh, Billy Martin.
You don't want to hear the story of what happened to me with Billy Martin. I really can't tell that one.
Okay, we'll leave that.
Awful.
We'll leave that for another time. Yeah. Somebody asked me if I
he
thought
slipped me a Mickey in the Oakland A's clubhouse.
Okay, that says it all.
Yeah.
But somebody asked me one time if I thought the relationship between Billy and Reggie was that adversarial or was it an act. I had to think it was that adversarial.
I don't know, but I think it was that adversarial.
Yeah.
What? Who's next?
And Gil Hodges.
Mensch.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's. I have to wrap up and tell you the story about how I first got introduced to Babe Ruth. It was by my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. He like your father. He was a huge Giants fan, just absolutely loved Giants. And we'd have debates every Sunday night at my grandmother's house about who the best baseball players of all time. And I'd ask him, because he saw them all. He saw Mantle, he saw DiMaggio, he saw Mays, he saw Ruth, Gehrig, just saw them all. And he said, the root is the best. The root. Do we have a winner on that third trivia question yet?
No. Hold on 1 second. Wait. Let me. I'm coming.
We'll give him a hint. The answer is obvious.
I don't even remember what the first question was.
Who broke Ruth's pitching record for a left-hander for the lowest hits per 9 innings?
Was it Ford?
No.
No, I don't know.
Now the answer to the second question was Mantle.
Yeah, that I knew. Okay.
So, who else we featuring tonight?
Yeah.
Sandy?
That's a good.
Sandy.
Was Sandy? Okay.
Yeah. So it was
Scott McConomy. I will say he gets it because he just put Koufax.
There you go. Very good.
Scott McConomy. So he gets the full sleeve of balls now.
All right. Good for Scott.
Yeah. But I think that
Jane, how would you like to wrap up tonight? What would you like to leave the audience with?
Buy my books.
There we go.
Read. Support your local authors. Support your local bookstores.
Your books are terrific. As you know, I'm a big Ruth fan, and I wrote a book on Ruth. And
I know you did.
Mine was a fictional, and yours is biography. But we really appreciate your time in coming on. Your insights, your stories are
blurry,
but they're not blurry. Yeah. And just very enjoyable. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Of course, we'll stay in touch. And next time on DC, we'll go out. I'll buy you dinner, and I won't slip you a Mickey.
Please. So let's go somewhere where you don't have to wear when we don't have to wear a mask. Okay.
We will. We'll wait till we don't have to wear a
Wait till we're
mask.
maskless.
It's great seeing you
Great to see you.
again.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
terrific.
Susan.
All right, Jane, thank you so much. Thank you, Ralph. Jane, I have to say you've absolutely won over the audience.
Oh, great.
We have lots of likes and loves and laughing, and your stories are great, and everybody appreciates your candor. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I hope I didn't offend anybody, but my hero, Red Smith, the great columnist for the Tribune and then the New York Times, always said you got to quote them the way they really talk.
That's
So
right. That's
You do
right.
that.
People
That's right.
appreciate,
And
the authenticity. So,
it was
and
great.
if anybody wants to buy your books, Jane, they should visit your website, right? www.janelevy.com.
your Amazon. I mean,
Terrific.
Amazon.
Okay,
whichever
wonderful.
we got.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And Ralph, we'll see you next week. And
We will
Jane,
see you
we'll
next.
hope to
Yes,
see you
next
again
week we have
soon.
an author who's a novelist. He wrote a story about a virus that starts in Nome, Alaska, and overtakes the world. So it's very creative and perfect timing.
And so diverting.
Yeah.
I know. They keep me on my toes. I have to do everything from scripts that I love to, every book, but it's enjoyable. The authors are wonderful, intelligent people, and they're lively conversations. This has been a great opportunity to post retirement to keep myself busy.
Yeah.
You do a great job, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
having
Yeah.
me.
Okay, well, thank you both so much, and we're going to say goodnight to you too, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I did want to let people know to please tune in to ZTV Live tomorrow night. Jane Collins is interviewing Jordan Costin of Safe Space Nova, and she will have at least 10 questions for Jordan. And then Thursday night, the Virginia Amos show is here, and Virginia's guest will be Kelly Grant of ALX Community in Old Town. So we have two great shows coming up for you tonight with two wonderful community leaders here in Alexandria. So till then, I will say goodnight. It was a great show tonight, and it looks like the storms have passed through without knocking
good.
us off.
I've got
which
them
is
now.
great. And remember to please be the good news in someone's life.
Great. Thank you.